covered the game in Indianapolis. We always love to talk to Mr. John McMullen. He joins us right now. All right, John. So obviously, a couple things in this game that were evident. They had enough to win the game, and they did it in the hands of their quarterback. They also figured out a way to stop the run a little bit, and they took advantage of a team that looked like they weren't ready to win because the Eagles gave them opportunities to win. Your assessment of this game?
Yeah, I mean, it was ugly. I will say that. I mean, you talk about the first drive, 10 plays, 75 yards, Mike, uh, and the Colts go up 7-0. But from that point forward, the defense actually played pretty well for the majority of the game. There were a couple plays. They had some issues with Josiah Scott today. And we've always talked about the injuries to Jordan Davis. Now we talk about Dallas Goedert, who they really, really missed offensively. But that Avonte Maddox injury, we don't talk about it now because every time there was a big play, it seemed like Josiah Scott was on the bad end of it from a defensive perspective, starting with that 3rd and 6 on the first drive. That was a nice blitz. TJ Edwards was loose. It was nicely designed, and Josiah just couldn't hold up on the back end. Then when they went up 16-10 with the big pass, it was Josiah Scott. Even at the end of the game, before Brandon Graham sacked it, kind of seal it, he gave up a big play. So that part of it's an issue, but for the most part, the defense played well. Offensively, they struggled, but Jalen Hurts took over the game in the fourth quarter, and he took it over with his legs. Let's be honest. I think he had 59 rushing yards in the fourth quarter, and the Red Sea opened for him on that touchdown. That was unbelievable from high above watching it, just how much space he had.
Hey, John, end of the game. Indianapolis fails to convert on a 4th and long. Eagles run out the clock. Cameras show Nick Sirianni going up and down the sideline, just emphatically engaging Eagles fans. Did he enlighten you guys as to what he was saying to the fans on the sideline?
Well, Nick was. This game was important to Nick for obvious reasons. I think it would have been even in a typical situation where Jim Irsay didn't fire Frank Reich. It would have been important to him because this place has meant a lot to him in his coaching career. But when they fired Frank Reich, and Nick loves Frank Reich. I mean, he loves him. It's his mentor. He thinks it was unfair what they did to him. So this one was more important than he let on. And it was ugly, and no style points, but a week where the Giants finally came down to earth. It looks like Dallas is going to handle Minnesota at least early pretty easily. Um, it's good to have that little buffer in the NFC East, and that's a big part of where the Eagles want to go. But Nick Sirianni wanted to win this game, so I mean, even though it looked bad, he was really, really excited to win this game in Indianapolis.
John, I'm a little concerned about the run offense, for this football team. They again today they really couldn't get things established the way they really wanted to. We were talking about it in pregame today about how their run game is predicated off the RPO, and I talked to Derek Gunn and Mark Forzetta. I said, if I was a defensive coordinator, I would take the PO away from this football team and just hit Jalen Hurts every time and force him, to hand the ball off. They struggled all day today, and all the way up to the fourth quarter when they made the decision and they figured out that they could dominate the numbers game by having Jalen run the ball instead of giving the ball to Miles or Boston Scott, because they really couldn't get anything going. How are they going to remedy that going forward? Because the essence of their run game can't be tied solely to the RPO. They've got to be able to line up in 12 personnel, 11 personnel, no matter what and just turn around and hand Miles the ball and be able to block people up front and run the football.
Yeah, they would like to do that better. There's no question about that. Seth, and they were really good at that early in the season. You think about the 4-minute drive in Detroit. You think about the long drive in Arizona. They had another long drive against Dallas. They were able to run the football when people knew they were going to run the football. That seems to have sort of evaporated a little bit from this offense, with the exception of Jalen Hurts. Look, you wanted the PO in it in the fourth quarter. Because I got news for you. If you didn't have the PO in it today, you don't win this football game.
Agreed.
I mean, this was all Jalen Hurts in the fourth quarter. This was all Jalen Hurts in the fourth quarter. And most of it was running the football. And, you know, it's times like this when they struggle and he puts them on his back and gets them over the finish line. You start to say, maybe there is something special about Jalen Hurts as a player. 16 runs today. We've been through this through the season. When he ran it 18 times in Detroit, we said, is that too much? Then he doesn't run it at all for a couple of weeks. And people are saying, why isn't Jalen Hurts running the football? Is there something wrong? It really, truly comes down to what do they need in that particular week.
Yep.
And without Dallas Goedert, I have a feeling that they're going to need more 16 rushing performances carry-wise than those games where they had 3 or 4 because they really struggled offensively otherwise. And it's difficult. I mean, you know, AJ looked fine. He looked healthy. That was one of my concerns coming into the game because he twisted his ankle last week. Devontae was typical Devontae. He got Quez Watkins loose a couple times, including the touchdown. Then you had, you know, they're trying to get Jack Stoll involved. They're trying to get Zach Pascal involved, Boston Scott. All of this, it takes a village mentality to replace Dallas Goedert. You can bring 18 of those guys. They're not going to replace Dallas Goedert, so they have to find different ways. And the different way today was Jalen Hurts running the football.
John, let's talk about the defensive tackle situation a little bit. I don't know if you have the snap numbers. I don't know how many Sue or Joseph got, but it seemed like the rotation was fairly healthy for them today. And also, how much was it the scheme? So was it more the fresh bodies? Was it more the scheme? And how many snaps did those guys actually play in lieu of Fletcher Cox?
Sue plays in lieu of Fletcher Cox for the most part. Linval is playing for the most part the zero or shade technique that Jordan Davis would typically play. And Linval played a lot, and from play one, and he played well. He played effectively. Won't have the snap counts. They don't put them out officially until early in the morning, but I'd be surprised if it was near 35, 40. That's how much Linval played. And I talked to him after the game, and he said, yeah, my job is to stop the run. If we were up by 2 touchdowns, I wouldn't have played as much. So that's his job. Sue's the more interesting one because he's going to have the effect on Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave and Milton Williams to a degree. But all those guys played. It's interesting, though. I mean, to me, the best player on the defensive line was Linval Joseph, and that's pretty amazing coming off the street on Wednesday, and he was dominant for the most part.
Hey, John, I don't know if you guys had a chance to talk to Fletcher Cox after the game, but if so, did he have anything to say about basically? I mean, it came out of the gate defensively with Sue and Joseph on the field, you know, right out of the gate. Did he have anything to say about his role being reduced in any way, shape, or form?
No, we're not about that. We talked to Fletcher about that during the week, and Ndamukong Suh as well. Fletcher was actually on board with Ndamukong Suh coming on. One of the things, like Fletcher doesn't want to play 70 snaps.
Right.
Nobody wants to play 70 snaps on the defensive line.
I do.
Now,
I do, John.
Yeah. Well, you're a linebacker, Seth. Linebackers play. Yeah. The defensive linemen, they want to rotate because they want to be fresh in the fourth quarter, and certainly in the new era. But, you know, so Fletch, but to me, see, my problem with that is the Washington game was such an anomaly. It's like you can't have Fletcher Cox playing 70 snaps. Well, no duh. He never plays 70 snaps. That was the anomaly because of all the things that went wrong in that game. It's not like he consistently plays 70 snaps. So that, in a lot of ways, that part of it's self-correcting. Where I'm interested is if they only have 55, 60 defensive snaps, does somebody start to get a little bit upset because they're not on the field, just like what Seth said, as much as they want to be on the field? That to me is going to be the more interesting question.
See, John, therein lies, the problem and the issue for me. Okay, for me, you either want to play or you don't want to play. You either get your behind in shape to play however many plays you got to play, or you don't. Because like last week, you're in a situation where he feels like he's played too much. But to your point, if you get a limited amount, if the defense is dominating, and all of a sudden he only gets 50% of 60 plays, that's 30 plays. Now he's pissed because I promise you he's got some incentives and some things that he wants to hit that he's not on the field for. My thing is, I hate the way this whole thing is headed. Okay, I get it. The data says the data analytics and everything. Listen, they don't condition anymore. So this whole theory that these guys couldn't walk in off the street and play, wasn't founded in the first place. Because tell me how many practices you've been to that when practice is over, those guys run hundreds, or those guys run 40s, or those guys run gassers. They're not in shape. They're in shape from what they actually do in practice. And practice is a joke now because they're on the field for an hour and a half and they're done. So I don't really understand this whole theory and where they're going with this thing. As a player, I wanted to play, and I wanted to play every down. And I was pissed when I had to give some of my downs to somebody else just because I was hurt, because that was the only time I was coming out of the game. These guys get paid a hell of a lot more to do a hell of a lot less than we used to do back in the day. And I don't like the precedent that is being set.
Yeah, but it's not like the Eagles said it, Seth. Everybody sort of does this. Defensive line is a rotational position. Most teams have one linebacker that doesn't come off the field. Or for the Eagles, that's typically TJ Edwards, but even he comes off for about 4, 5, 6 plays. When they go in the dime, even TJ comes off. Marcus Epps is the one player that plays every single snap. Chauncey's out there for the most part, but he got banged up a couple of weeks back. So those are the two guys that play every single snap. So there are certain positions that are rotational positions. Defensive line is a rotational position. Offensive line isn't on the offensive side of the ball, but wide receiver is, running back is, obviously quarterback isn't. So there are certain positions that are rotational positions. Defensive line is one of them. They were a rotational team before Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph got here, but it was guys like Milton Williams and Marvin Wilson and Marlon Tuipulotu getting significant snaps. Now those are going to better players. I get the Eagles' thought process. My only problem is now you have 7 Pro Bowl players on the defensive line. Now they're not Pro Bowl players now, but they have that on the resume. And Sue's got 5. He's got 5 All-Pro nods. Linval's got 2. Robert Quinn's got 2 All-Pros. About Brandon and Fletcher and Javon, the players that have been here, Josh Sweat, who made the Pro Bowl last season. Everybody wants to be on the field in the fourth quarter with the game on the line. Everybody can't be on the field when you're only playing 4 defensive linemen, or sometimes the Eagles play the odd man fronts, but typically in the fourth quarter, you're playing pass, so it's going to be a 4-man front. I don't know. I think it could create some issues down the road.
You know what makes it exciting though, John? Because if you live by the mode or the model of the NFL is supposed to be a meritocracy, right? So the best players are going to be on the field at crunch time. So it creates this inner competition as you work and as you produce as the weeks go by. The most productive players, in my opinion, are going to be on the field. Listen, Brandon Graham doesn't play a lot of snaps, but that play he made today was huge, okay?
Yeah.
So now, you know in crunch time when you need a play to happen, I don't know who your other defensive, you got Josh Sweat and you got Hassan Reddick that are actually starters. But at crunch time, one of them guys are coming off the field and Brandon Graham's going on the field, okay? So now let the defensive tackles kind of fight it out and figure it out. Who's ever most productive gets the plays. If you're non-productive, you get to stand over next to me and sip on the Gatorade bottle in the most crucial of times.
Yeah, and that's how it should be. But then, you know, contracts come into it, and, you know, you start hearing, you got to hear from the GM who paid $15 million to Hassan Reddick to go rush the passer, and he's not going to be on the field in the fourth quarter rushing the passer. That's easier said than done. And by the way, Hassan deserves to be on the field in those situations. But you can see how the problems would be created. You know, from a strict what you're talking about standpoint, though, Seth, better players. Linval Joseph is better than Marlon Tuipulotu. Ndamukong Suh is better than Milton Williams. So, in theory, the Eagles are better.
Hey, John, does Darius Slay say anything about his play? I mean, it seems like his game's been a little off the last couple of games. And I don't know if anybody questioned him about it or if he just volunteered what's going on with him in any way, shape, or form. He didn't play a bad game today, but, you know, you go back to the Monday night game, and this game, it's not what we've grown accustomed to seeing from him this season.
No, well, definitely on Monday night, he did not play well against Washington, and he admitted that. He was the first person to admit it. Today, he gave up one big pass that you might say, oh, that's Darius Slay. That kind of surprised you. But Indianapolis wasn't, as I said, after that first drive, they weren't very effective at all. And certainly from a consistent basis, moving the football. And when they did get big plays in the passing game, which were few and far between, it was usually against Josiah Scott. So when you take away that first drive, they had 209 total yards.
Yeah.
So the defense, by and large, wasn't the issue today. The offense was. But, hey, they got the win. It's not about style points. Like I said, the Giants lost. Dallas has already had 23, so, you know, you already have the tiebreaker there. So the Eagles are in a really, really good position to sort of outlast these injuries of Jordan Davis and Dallas Goedert and Avonte Maddox. And if this team can get to the playoffs with the number one seed and those guys are healthy, then you start to say, wow, this is looking pretty good.
John, thank you so much for hanging out and giving us your analysis every week. We really appreciate it, and we'll catch you next week.
Safe travels,
thank
man.
you, guys.
Yep.
All right, before we go to a break, just quickly, because he said something that was really important.